So now we're on the second 10 marker. So it's like, which was more important in bringing about the Declaration of Independence in 1776, the First Continental Congress, or the Second Continental Congress? We have to link it directly to the question, because just to point out, one problem students have sometimes is they just talk about those things in general, and it's always in relation to the question. Otherwise, you cannot score very highly. It's not how important are they just in general, it's how important are they getting to the Declaration of Independence. So Peter's going to lead off with the Second Continental Congress, which I think is the easier argument. It's giving me the difficult one.
Oh, don't say that. I wanted to feel like I'd persuaded you.
Yeah,
you kind of won the debate, you know.
I'm going to do my best.
Now you're just giving it to me. That's no fun at all.
I'm just tempering expectations.
Well, okay, so I mean, I think the important thing is the dates.
Yeah.
It's First Continental Congress. The Second Continental Congress takes place in 1775. Right, so fighting has already started. And if we're talking about the Declaration of Independence, the critical fact, like the critical thing you need in order to have independence is for each of the states to agree to be independent, right? To have relinquished their attachment to Britain, their political attachment to Britain at least. And I think on that, if understood in that sense, Second Continental Congress is much more important than the first, right? For the following reasons. Now, it's true. So there is a complication. The Second Continental Congress does not explicitly come together with the aim of declaring independence. There's not unanimity, I should say. There are some people people there that do want independence. There are others that don't. And events are kind of taking place as this Congress is going on, right? Events that will eventually lead to unanimity on the independence front. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's one qualification, but the really important point is that the Second Continental Congress basically organizes the army.
Yeah.
Right? You can't have independence without an army.
Mm-hmm.
So the Congress basically takes charge of the conduct of the war.
Mm-hmm.
No Declaration of Independence without an army that can wage war. They have Washington at its head, right? So
yeah,
the authority to lead this army comes from the Continental.
Yeah, and Congress. It's important that Washington's the man appointed to lead it as well, because I think he has that respect.
That's right. So yeah, so that's a kind of, I guess it's 1 or 2 points, or 1A and 1B. One is that it's got 1A is that
they count as 2 points when
do they? Okay, yeah. So it's got conduct of the war.
It also used them as two separate.
It also appoints Washington as its head. It has the ability to raise money for an army.
Yeah, $2 million in paper money.
Yeah, first time. It also does other things. So so I think those are the really critical points.
And why is the money important? Again, you have to link it to the question.
Money's important. You need money to have an army.
Yeah.
And no money, no army.
Yeah.
So, and without an army, you don't have any independence. So it's a necessary condition.
Yeah.
It also, the Continental Congress also, so it's not so simple, right, to just raise money. You actually have to have the authority and the infrastructure to do it.
Yeah.
It's not perfect. In fact, it's fraught with difficulties, as we see, because there's always this problem of getting states to pay their share, right?
Yeah.
Like there's constant problems with funding this army, but the very fact that it has the authority to do it is pretty important, given that there was none before.
Yeah.
Right. So, for that reason, I think it's the Second Continental Congress, which is the most important.
Why more than the first?
Why more than the first? So the First Continental Congress, its purpose was to express opposition to the coercive acts Okay, because we're still back in 1774.
You're showing your British like allegiance by calling them the coercive acts.
I know I should call them
I'm going to call them the intolerable acts to keep up
the
my
intolerable
American
acts.
side.
Yeah, the intolerable acts. No, well, we're taking the American side. So
Yeah.
that was the aim of the First Continental Congress, and it failed because the British didn't take any notice of it.
Mm.
And the Congress itself agreed to dissolve if their petition failed, so it dissolved. It hasn't yet established really the infrastructure for war. It's you could say, I guess the strongest argument is that it aggravated the British perhaps.
Yeah.
Although it didn't go as
I can come.
It was limited. It was limited. It didn't go as far as the Suffolk results, right, in Massachusetts. So it was it was more moderate than that.
Yeah.
So I mean, again, and I mean, the First Continental Congress also establishes the precedent to have a Continental Congress.
Yeah, that's
to have a body. I know that's your argument. I know that's your argument. I'm just going to smash you with this one.
Yeah, go on. Okay.
Right,
but I've got. Yeah, go on.
Okay, yeah, it's the only angle you got. I know it's a feeble one.
Yeah.
But I don't think that that's as significant as, in fact, what the Second Continental Congress is able to do, despite, as I said, with the qualification, with the admission that its purpose wasn't explicitly to declare independence yet, but it did. It made independence possible, right? Because of the reasons that we said, that's I rest my case.
Your mic,
James.
This is Peter from my students. This is Peter demonstrating what a good lawyer does, which is anticipate the opponent's only arguments and smash them before they get. You always want to anticipate the opponent's argument and knock them out, because then when they then go to argue them, it's already been debunked, at least theoretically. It makes my job harder. Okay, so I've got the First Continental Congress. I think
James was magnanimous in allowing me to choose which side I wanted.
Yeah. I give me the challenge. I didn't anticipate being so knackered when I was doing it, but I think this is a hard one. All right. So my only angle really is without the First Continental Congress, the Second Continental Congress wouldn't happen, because obviously the Second Continental Congress is significance leading towards the Declaration of Independence. But you could argue that maybe it was already too late by that point. That the Declaration of Independence was inevitable by the Second Continental Congress, because of what happened after the First Continental Congress. So
that's I think that's weak tea. You need an army. You need an army.
Throw the tea in the harbour.
That's right. That's right. I meant that. I meant that very.
So okay.
Loaded.
The First Continental Congress is really significant because it's the first. The colonies get together, and as we know, the colonies were separate entities. They had their own interests outside, and there was a moment where they were deciding whether they were just going to let Massachusetts. A lot of colonies didn't really like Massachusetts, and they
still don't.
No, they still don't. That's true. But like they were going to leave them to hang them out to dry, basically. And there was a lot of talk, like New York and that were like, we're not really getting down into this unless Virginia comes on board. So I think it was significant that the southern colonies and the middle colonies came together in the First Continental Congress to show solidarity for Massachusetts. Because without that, I know Georgia didn't go, but they were the smallest.
I was about to say. Yeah, no Georgia.
I'm going to anticipate your argument and be like, well, they were the smallest colony and they were less important. So that's what the important ones all went: Pennsylvania, New
York, Rhode Island.
Virginia. I think people would have been happier if they weren't there. And then Rhode Island. And then but Pennsylvania was there, New York was there, Virginia, and most importantly, Virginia was there, because that South-North rivalry over the economic model, the access to tariffs, import-export, mercantilism was significant. So the fact that Virginia came along and everyone got there, and they showed solidarity. So I think the significance was that you cannot have a Declaration of Independence without a sense of unity. And I think that First Continental Congress brought that sense of unity. And I could argue it was so successful that Georgia jumped in for the Second Continental Congress. If the First Continental Congress had not been successful, that wouldn't have happened. It was significant because it coordinated the opposition to the coercive acts. And this is important because it was, the key word is coordinated opposition. Because before that, it was sporadic. What was happening in Massachusetts wasn't being replicated elsewhere, not at the same level. And it established, it built upon the Suffolk results, and it established a united colonial position that Parliament could not raise taxes without their consent. It established that they were loyal to the Crown, but not to Parliament. So I think it established that all of the colonies were on the same page about the fact that they didn't really understand how the relationship between Parliament and King worked, but that they were going to stand on it. And also, I think the fact that it established boycotts of British goods was really significant, because the Intolerable Acts were mostly targeted on Massachusetts. There was no reason for the other colonies to sacrifice their economy in solidarity, unless there was, a growing sense of unity and a growing sense of shared identity. And I think that fundamental growing sense of shared identity is why the First Continental Congress is most important, because it set that up. And also the counteracts that, then leading obviously to the future conflicts afterwards in Lexington and Concord was happening at the time, and you then have the Battle of Bunker Hill and Lexington and Concord come after this. And I don't think that the Massachusetts militia would have been so confident in those conflicts if they hadn't realized that the other colonies were in support of them. They may have been more reluctant to do it. And that set the ball rolling for the Second Continental Congress. The Second Continental Congress was called to deal with the consequences of what happened after the First Continental Congress. So without the First Continental Congress, maybe there's no Lexington Concord, maybe there's no Bunker Hill, maybe there's no Second Continental Congress, and then maybe there's no Declaration of Independence. That's my sole route to a winning argument.
Bravo, good job.
I did as best I can. You want to counter me on that?
Well, I think again, it's basically the way you frame the set of events that lead up to the
and
declaration.
As always, and this is important for the students to know that, in the exam, you are framing the question. You set your own.
You are. That's right, and so you can choose either. It doesn't. I wouldn't be anxious about getting the choice wrong. It's just about framing it in the right way and showing.
Yeah, there is no right or wrong in history.
There's no right or wrong answer. So I'm being a bit facetious when I pretend to be destroying James on the.
Well, you give him. I definitely have the harder path.
Yeah, some of them are harder than others.
Yeah, there's only one way. There's only one route. I mean, my arguments. There's only one possible argument. I don't see another one.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, you still.
No, I've got nothing more to add. I still stick to my guns, literally the guns, since Second Continental Congress had an army. Yeah,
we should also talk. The Second Continental Congress sent the Olive Branch petition that was rejected.
It did, and it failed. Right, obviously.
And George III rejected, and that it's actually the Declaration of Independence. I suppose the key thing with that Olive Branch petition failing, King George III declared them outside of the empire. That I think is the key thing.
Yeah, I love George. Have you seen George in Hamilton the musical? He's one of my favorite characters.
Yeah, we're going to see it next month, so they're going to be.
Oh, good. I hope I enjoy it. There's a very strange thing about the Second Continental Congress, though. There's a quote from Middlecalf that I liked. He says, "Congress prepared for war while it begged for peace."
Yeah, well, as you would.
So that's kind of weird. It proclaimed its determination to protect American liberties while it petitioned for reconciliation. So that's sort of paradoxical, isn't it?
It is, but it's also sensible. if you've got the world's greatest,
I didn't say it wasn't sensible.
If the world's greatest superpower is looking like it's going to give you a whooping, you need to prepare yourself. But I think the key bit is the key consequence of the Second Continental Congress is probably George III's proclamation of rebellion, because once he says in August 1775 that my subjects are traitors, they're openly in rebellion, I think the Declaration of Independence is inevitable. What are they going to do? They've already been kicked out. The Declaration of Independence isn't really a Declaration of Independence. It's like we're already out. We need.
It's a kind of post hoc justification, right?
Yeah, the Americans spin room. You didn't.
And they've been doing it ever since.
Declared independence.
I know. They've been doing it ever since.
They always spin their history. They're the masters of that. That's why I'm doing the civil rights course. I mean, hell, I mean the spin on
Oh
America.
yeah,
America's just built on spin of its own history. But so is every country, really. It's just the Americans,
America's.
like everything, America just takes it to another level. Yeah.
Does
So
that make it? Does that make it? Does that make it like a turbine that's spinning constantly, but also creating a lot of
yeah,
energy?
I was trying to explain to my students. Obviously, it's like it was formed by people who were either incredibly ambitious or incredibly desperate, and either way, either way,
No.
either way, that doesn't lead to moderation.
I think we're spinning off
Yeah,
the trail
yeah.
here.
So I think I agree with you that I think you can make a case actually for the first one. I'm going to be bold and be like, yeah, why not? You can make it.
Why not? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Fight the hard fight.
I think
Why
we've
not?
given good arguments on both sides, so students can kind of pick their own where they would go.
I do.
All right, let's hang up and then take on the one we've done a million times once more. once
Okay.
once more the same question.